Discipline is hard. Waking up when your body begs for comfort is hard. Saying no to distractions when everything around you says, relax, is hard. Doing the work when no one is watching, when no one is clapping, when no one even knows you're trying, that is hard. But there is something far harder than discipline. It is living a life where you know, deep down, that you could have been more. It is lying awake at night, replaying the same regrets. It is watching time pass while you stay the same. It is waking up years from now and realizing that comfort stole the future you once dreamed of. This audiobook is not here to motivate you for a moment. It is here to confront you with a truth most people avoid their entire lives. Discipline is painful, but avoiding discipline costs you everything. If you listen to this until the end, you will not feel entertained. You will feel exposed. And if you are honest with yourself, you will feel changed. This is hard truth. Chapter 1. Comfort is quietly destroying you. Comfort never arrives as an enemy. It never knocks loudly or demands your attention. It enters your life softly, almost politely, offering relief when you feel tired, distraction when you feel overwhelmed, and excuses when effort feels inconvenient. Comfort speaks in a gentle voice. It tells you that you have time, that you deserve rest, that tomorrow will be better, that one day off will not matter. And because it does not feel dangerous, you welcome it. You let it stay. You make room for it. Over time, without realizing it, you begin to organize your life around it. Comfort is not the absence of pain. It is the avoidance of growth. It is choosing the familiar over the necessary. It is choosing ease over progress. And the most dangerous thing about comfort is that it does not take your life all at once. It takes it slowly, decision by decision, until one day you look around and realize that years have passed, but you have not moved. At first, comfort feels like kindness. It feels like self-care. It feels like protecting yourself from stress and pressure. But there is a difference between rest and retreat. Rest restores you, so you can return stronger. Comfort convinces you not to return at all. It keeps you in the same place, while time keeps moving forward. You do not wake up one day and decide to abandon your potential. You simply delay the work. You postpone the effort. You tell yourself that you will start when conditions improve, when motivation returns, when life becomes less complicated. And comfort happily supports this logic. It tells you that now is not the right time, that you are not ready, that you should wait until you feel better, stronger, more confident. But readiness is not something you feel. It is something you build through action. Comfort steals that action from you. Comfort makes ordinary days feel safe, but it also makes them empty. It fills your hours with distractions that numb your awareness. Endless scrolling, endless consumption, endless noise. You are busy, but not progressing. Occupied, but not fulfilled. Distracted, but not advancing. And slowly, without a dramatic collapse, your standards begin to lower. What once felt unacceptable now feels normal. What once felt temporary becomes permanent. The most painful part is that comfort does not look like failure. It looks like survival. It looks like getting by. It looks like being reasonable. But surviving is not living, and being reasonable is not the same as being honest. Deep down, you know when you are avoiding effort. You feel it in the quiet moments, when the noise fades and your thoughts return. That subtle discomfort you try to escape is not stress. It is your unused potential asking for your attention. Comfort teaches you to negotiate with yourself. Just this once. Just today. Just after this break. And each negotiation weakens your resolve. Each compromise makes the next one easier. Over time, discipline feels extreme, and comfort feels normal. That is how people drift far from who they were meant to become without ever making a single reckless decision. There is a version of you that exists only on the other side of discomfort. Stronger, clearer, more focused, more confident. Comfort keeps you from meeting that version of yourself. Not because you are incapable, but because you are constantly choosing what feels good now over what would feel meaningful later. Comfort is addictive because it removes friction, and friction is uncomfortable. But friction is also where growth happens. Muscles grow through resistance, skill grows through struggle, confidence grows through challenge. When you remove friction from your life, you also remove the conditions that create strength. Many people mistake comfort for peace. Peace is earned through effort, alignment, and purpose. Comfort is temporary relief that postpones discomfort, not eliminates it. The discomfort you avoid today returns later as regret, anxiety, frustration, and self-doubt. The bill always comes due. Comfort also isolates you from responsibility. It teaches you to blame circumstances, timing, other people, or the world itself. It whispers that your situation is unique, that your struggles are different, that your delay is justified. But comfort does not care about your excuses. It only cares about staying in control. The longer you stay comfortable, the harder discomfort feels. What once required a small push now feels unbearable. This is why starting again feels so difficult. Comfort weakens your tolerance for effort. It trains you to avoid resistance instead of enduring it. And eventually, even simple discipline feels overwhelming. This is why comfort is dangerous, not because it feels good, but because it changes who you are becoming. It reshapes your identity quietly. You begin to see yourself as someone who waits, someone who postpones, someone who almost starts. And identity is powerful. Once you see yourself that way, your behavior follows. But here is the truth most people never confront. Comfort is not neutral. It is not harmless. It is actively shaping your future, whether you are aware of it or not. Every moment you choose comfort over discipline, you are choosing a version of your life that is smaller than it could be. You do not need to remove comfort entirely from your life. You need to stop letting it lead. Comfort should be a reward, not a ruler. Rest should follow effort, not replace it. Ease should be earned, not assumed. The discomfort you are avoiding is not punishment. It is an invitation to grow, to strengthen, to become someone you respect. Discipline will challenge you, but comfort will hollow you out. Discipline asks for effort. Comfort asks for surrender. And the hardest truth in this chapter is this: the life you want is on the other side of discomfort you keep avoiding. Not dramatic discomfort, not heroic suffering, just consistent, honest effort. The kind that feels boring, the kind that feels inconvenient, the kind that feels unnecessary in the moment, but essential in hindsight. Comfort will never tell you this. Discipline will. And once you see comfort for what it truly is, you can no longer unsee it. Chapter 2. Motivation is the most dangerous lie you believe. Motivation feels powerful, but it is fragile. It arrives suddenly, burns brightly, and disappears just as quickly. One moment you feel unstoppable, convinced that this time will be different, that you are finally ready to change your life. And then life interrupts. Fatigue sets in. Doubt creeps in. Discomfort appears. And motivation vanishes without explanation, leaving you exactly where you started. This is why motivation is dangerous, not because it is useless, but because it convinces you that progress should feel good. It teaches you to associate action with emotion, effort with excitement, and discipline with inspiration. And when those feelings disappear, you assume something is wrong. You assume you are not ready. You assume the moment has passed. Motivation trains you to wait. Discipline trains you to move. Most people are not lazy. They are waiting for a feeling that was never meant to lead them. They are waiting to feel confident before acting, energized before starting, certain before committing. But confidence is built through action. Energy comes from momentum. Certainty is earned through repetition. Waiting reverses the natural order of growth. Motivation convinces you that successful people feel different than you do, that they wake up excited, driven, and inspired every day. But the truth is simpler and harder to accept. They act even when they feel nothing. They act when they feel tired. They act when they feel uncertain. They act when quitting would feel easier. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is structural. When motivation is your driver, your life becomes unstable. Progress happens in bursts, followed by long periods of stagnation. You start strong, then fade. You make promises, then renegotiate them. You feel hope, then disappointment. Over time, this cycle teaches you to distrust yourself. You stop believing your own plans because you have seen them fail too many times. Motivation gives you excuses that sound intelligent. It tells you to wait for the right mood. It tells you to start fresh tomorrow. It tells you that forcing yourself is unhealthy. And while there is truth in rest, motivation twists that truth into avoidance. It turns self-care into self-sabotage. Discipline does not argue with your feelings. It does not ask for permission. It does not care how inspired you feel. Discipline simply asks one question: what must be done today, regardless of how you feel? This is where most people resist. They believe acting without motivation is inauthentic, harsh, or unsustainable. But in reality, acting without motivation is how identity is formed. You do not become disciplined by feeling disciplined. You become disciplined by behaving as someone who follows through. Motivation fades because it depends on novelty. Discipline lasts because it depends on systems. Systems remove emotion from decision-making. They reduce friction. They create automatic behavior. And automatic behavior is what builds extraordinary results over ordinary days. Motivation wants intensity. Discipline wants consistency. Intensity feels productive, but consistency is transformative. Intensity burns out. Consistency compounds. The most successful people are not the most motivated. They are the most reliable. They show up even when the reward is invisible. They understand that progress is not dramatic. It is quiet, repetitive, and often boring. Motivation tells you to change your life all at once. Discipline tells you to change today. This difference matters. Motivation overwhelms you with scale. Discipline focuses you on process. Motivation wants big results now. Discipline is patient. Motivation wants proof immediately. Discipline is comfortable with delay. When you rely on motivation, failure feels personal. You think something is wrong with you. You think you lack willpower or talent. But when you rely on discipline, failure becomes feedback. You adjust systems. You refine habits. You continue. Motivation makes quitting emotional. Discipline makes quitting unnecessary. There will be days when you feel nothing, days when the work feels pointless, days when progress is invisible. Those days are not signs to stop. They are the days that matter most, because they separate people who act only when it feels good from people who act because it is necessary. Motivation wants you to feel ready. Discipline teaches you to become ready through repetition. Every time you act without motivation, you strengthen a deeper form of confidence. Not the loud confidence that comes from hype, but the quiet confidence that comes from self-trust. You begin to see yourself as someone who does not depend on mood, someone who does not negotiate with discomfort, someone who moves regardless. This is a dangerous shift, but in the best way, because once you stop needing motivation, nothing can stop you. External circumstances lose power, emotional fluctuations lose control. Discipline becomes your default state, not your emergency response. Motivation is a spark. Discipline is the engine. And engines are built, not felt. The hardest part is accepting that you will never feel consistently motivated. No one does. The difference is not in feeling, it is in behavior. People who build meaningful lives do not feel better than you. They behave differently than you. Motivation asks, "Do I feel like doing this?" Discipline asks, "Who do I want to become?" And once that question becomes louder than your emotions, everything changes. Because discipline does not need motivation, but motivation will always need discipline to survive. That is the truth most people never accept. Chapter 3, Self-Betrayal, is the real reason you don't trust yourself. Failure hurts, but it heals. Self-betrayal wounds quietly and lingers. Most people believe their biggest problem is lack of discipline, lack of focus, or lack of motivation. But beneath all of that sits a deeper issue that rarely gets named. It is not that you fail. It is that you have repeatedly abandoned yourself, and every time you do, something inside you remembers. Self-betrayal does not happen in dramatic moments. It happens in private. It happens when you promise yourself you will start tomorrow, and you don't. When you tell yourself you will stop, and you don't. When you say, "This time is different," and then repeat the same pattern. No one else sees it. No one else judges you. But you feel it, and slowly, your inner voice loses credibility. At first, you still believe yourself. You still make plans with confidence. You still imagine a better version of your life. But after enough broken promises, doubt creeps in. You begin to hesitate before committing to your own goals. You delay decisions. You soften standards. Not because you are incapable, but because your mind has learned a painful lesson. Your words do not always lead to action. This is the silent damage of self-betrayal. It erodes self-trust. And without self-trust, discipline becomes nearly impossible. Because discipline requires believing that effort will be honored. It requires knowing that when you say, "I will," you mean it. When that belief is gone, every commitment feels heavy. Every goal feels unrealistic. Every plan feels like another lie waiting to happen. Self-betrayal creates an internal conflict. Part of you wants more. Another part of you does not believe you will follow through, and that conflict drains energy. You feel tired before you even begin. You feel resistance before effort starts. You procrastinate not because the task is hard, but because trusting yourself feels risky. Most people never connect these dots. They think they need more motivation, better habits, stronger discipline. But what they really need is to repair the relationship they have with themselves. Discipline is not just behavior. It is a promise-keeping practice. Every time you keep a small promise to yourself, something powerful happens. Your nervous system relaxes. Your mind becomes calmer. Your confidence stabilizes. because you are no longer arguing with yourself. You are aligned. But every time you break a promise, even a small one, that alignment fractures. You begin to rely on external pressure instead of internal commitment. Deadlines, fear, guilt, urgency. You become reactive instead of intentional. This is why so many people only act when things get bad, when pain becomes unbearable, when consequences arrive. They move not because they trust themselves, but because they are trapped. And while that can create short bursts of change, it never builds a strong identity. A disciplined person does not wait to be forced. They move because they said they would. Self-betrayal also changes how you talk to yourself. Your inner dialogue becomes harsher, more critical, more defensive. You call yourself lazy, weak, inconsistent, but those labels miss the truth. You are not lazy. You are disappointed in yourself, and disappointment is heavier than laziness. When you disappoint yourself enough times, you begin to lower expectations to protect your ego. You stop aiming high, not because you don't want more, but because you don't want to feel that familiar shame again. So you settle, you rationalize, you tell yourself you're being realistic. But realism is often just fear dressed in logic. The truth is uncomfortable. The reason discipline feels so hard is not because effort is painful. It is because effort reminds you of past promises you didn't keep. Starting again forces you to confront your history. It asks you to trust yourself one more time, and trust feels dangerous when it has been broken repeatedly. This is why rebuilding discipline must start small, not because small actions are enough to change your life, but because they are enough to restore trust. One kept promise matters more than 100 ambitious plans. One completed action matters more than a perfect schedule. When you begin to keep promises to yourself, even tiny ones, the internal resistance fades. Your mind stops fighting you. Your energy increases. Discipline becomes lighter, not because the work changed, but because the relationship changed. Self-trust is built through evidence, quiet evidence, boring evidence, repeated evidence, showing up when it would be easier not to, finishing what you start, doing what you said you would do, especially when no one is watching. And here is the part most people avoid hearing. No one can give you self-trust. No system, no book, no routine can replace it. It is earned, slowly, patiently, through action. Every disciplined life rests on this foundation. Without it, everything collapses eventually. With it, everything becomes possible. You do not need to become a different person overnight. You need to stop betraying the person you already are. You need to become reliable to yourself. Not impressive, not extreme, reliable. Because the moment you trust yourself again, discipline stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like alignment. You are no longer forcing yourself forward. You are simply keeping your word. And a person who keeps their word to themselves is dangerous in the best possible way. That is the truth behind discipline. And that is why self-betrayal is harder than failure. Chapter 4. The fear is not failure, it is effort. Most people think they are afraid of failing. They are not. Failure is visible, explainable, and even respectable in some cases. What most people are truly afraid of is effort. Sustained effort. Honest effort. Effort without guarantees. Failure has a story. You can explain it. You can justify it. You can say you tried. But effort strips you of excuses. Effort exposes who you are when comfort is removed. Effort demands consistency, and consistency leaves nowhere to hide. This is why so many people delay starting, not because they cannot do the work, but because once they begin, they must confront themselves every day. Effort forces accountability, and accountability is uncomfortable. Effort requires you to show up when no one is watching, when there is no praise, when there is no immediate reward, when the outcome is uncertain. That uncertainty is terrifying for the ego. The ego wants certainty. It wants reassurance. It wants applause before commitment. Effort offers none of that. Effort asks you to invest energy without proof. It asks you to act without validation. It asks you to endure boredom, resistance, frustration, and doubt repeatedly. This is not dramatic suffering. It is quiet resistance. And quiet resistance is harder to endure than dramatic pain because it does not feel meaningful in the moment. Most people can tolerate short bursts of pain. Few can tolerate long stretches of effort that feel ordinary and unnoticed. This is why people romanticize struggle but avoid routine. They want the story, not the process. Effort dismantles fantasy. It replaces imagination with reality. In your mind, improvement is exciting. In real life, improvement is repetitive. You do the same things again and again, with slight adjustments, often without knowing if they are working. That uncertainty creates anxiety, and anxiety pushes people back toward comfort. The fear of effort is deeply tied to identity. Effort threatens the image you have of yourself. If you try and struggle, you might look inexperienced. If you try and move slowly, you might look average. If you try and fail publicly, you might feel exposed. So instead of risking effort, many people choose potential. Potential feels safe. Potential lets you believe you could be great without proving it. But potential that is never tested becomes a burden. It turns into pressure. It turns into shame. It turns into quiet self-contempt. Because deep down, you know you are avoiding the very thing that would free you. Effort also forces you to confront time. When you work consistently, you become aware of how slow real progress is. You realize that change does not happen in weeks, but in months and years. That realization is uncomfortable because it removes urgency and replaces it with patience. And patience requires emotional maturity. Many people would rather stay stuck than face the reality that meaningful change takes longer than they hoped. They would rather distract themselves than commit to a long road with no shortcuts. Effort demands long-term thinking, and long-term thinking is rare. Effort also removes the illusion of fairness. When you work consistently, you see that outcomes are not equal. Some people progress faster, some have advantages, some seem naturally better. Effort forces you to accept reality without bitterness. It forces you to focus on your lane, your pace, your process. And that is emotionally difficult for people who measure their worth through comparison. This is why many people sabotage their own effort. They start, then slow down. They commit, then disappear. They get close, then retreat. Not because they cannot continue, but because continuing would require them to accept the full weight of responsibility for their life. Effort removes plausible deniability. Once you truly commit, you can no longer say you did not try. And if you cannot hide behind excuses, you must face outcomes honestly. That honesty is uncomfortable, but it is also liberating. Effort builds a different kind of confidence. Not loud confidence, not performative confidence, but grounded confidence. The kind that comes from knowing you can endure discomfort without collapsing. The kind that does not depend on praise or validation. The kind that remains steady even when results are slow. Most people underestimate how much emotional strength effort builds. They focus only on results. But results are secondary. The real transformation happens internally. Effort teaches patience. It teaches restraint. It teaches humility. It teaches focus. These qualities cannot be learned through thinking alone. They are forged through repetition. Effort also changes how you experience pain. When you avoid effort, pain feels overwhelming. When you embrace effort, pain becomes familiar. Not pleasant, but manageable. You learn that discomfort does not kill you. You learn that resistance is temporary. You learn that you are stronger than your emotions. This is why disciplined people seem calm under pressure. They are not immune to stress. They are simply familiar with it. They have practiced discomfort daily. Effort has trained their nervous system to remain steady. Avoiding effort keeps you fragile. Small obstacles feel large. Minor setbacks feel catastrophic. Any resistance feels like a reason to quit. Effort builds resilience, slowly, quietly, reliably. The fear of effort also explains why people seek endless information. They read, they watch, they plan, they prepare. Preparation feels productive without requiring vulnerability. But preparation without action is avoidance disguised as intelligence. Effort begins where preparation ends. There is a moment in every disciplined life when the person accepts a simple truth. Effort will never feel comfortable, and waiting for it to feel comfortable is a waste of time. Once this truth is accepted, resistance decreases, not because effort becomes easier, but because expectation changes. Effort is no longer treated as a problem, it is treated as a requirement. This shift is powerful. When effort becomes normal, comfort loses its authority. You stop negotiating. You stop asking how you feel. You start acting based on values instead of emotions. This does not mean you become rigid or cruel to yourself. It means you become honest. Honest about what growth costs. Honest about what stagnation costs. Honest about the trade-offs you are making every day. Effort does not guarantee success. But avoiding effort guarantees regret. That is the choice most people never consciously make. They drift into avoidance. They numb themselves with distractions. They lower expectations. They normalize dissatisfaction. And then they wonder why life feels heavy. Effort lightens life in the long run. It feels heavy at first, but it removes the weight of self-doubt. It removes the weight of indecision. It removes the weight of regret. This is why effort is harder than discipline itself. Discipline is a decision. Effort is a daily confrontation. Discipline is a promise. Effort is keeping that promise over and over again. And once you stop fearing effort, something remarkable happens. You realize that the pain you were avoiding was never the enemy. It was the path. Effort is not punishment. It is proof that you are alive, engaged, and moving forward. It is proof that you have not surrendered to comfort. And the moment you accept effort as part of your identity, discipline stops feeling like resistance and starts feeling like integrity. That is the turning point. That is where real change begins. Chapter 5. Time is the one thing you can never discipline later. There is a quiet danger most people never confront directly, not because they don't understand it, but because understanding it fully would force change. That danger is time. Not time as numbers on a clock or dates on a calendar, but time as accumulation, time as consequence, time as the silent witness to every decision you postpone. Time does not argue with you. It does not pressure you. It does not remind you. It simply moves forward, collecting the results of your choices without judgment. Whether you act or delay, time records everything. Discipline can be postponed. Effort can be postponed. Pain can be postponed. But time cannot. This is what makes delay so expensive. When you delay discipline, you are not standing still. You are moving backward while convincing yourself you are waiting. Every day without action becomes a day you must later make up for. And unlike money, energy, or motivation, time cannot be replenished. Most people believe they will start later. Later when they feel ready. Later when life is calmer. Later when circumstances improve. But later is an illusion that grows weaker with age. Later shrinks as responsibility grows. Later becomes heavier as regret accumulates. What people rarely admit is that delay feels safe in the present. It feels reasonable. It feels like self-preservation. But delay compounds invisibly, and by the time its cost becomes obvious, the price is already paid. Time exposes patterns. One delayed day feels insignificant. One delayed week feels manageable. One delayed year feels uncomfortable. 10 delayed years feel irreversible. And yet the pattern is the same. The only difference is how much time has passed, while you told yourself the same story. The hardest truth about time is not that it passes quickly. It is that it passes quietly. You don't feel it slipping away in dramatic moments. You feel it in subtle realizations, in the gap between who you are and who you thought you would be. In the shock of looking back and realizing how long you have been almost starting. Time is merciless to indecision. It rewards those who act early and punishes those who hesitate, not out of cruelty, but out of indifference. Time does not care about your intentions. It only responds to behavior. This is why regret is so heavy. Regret is not just pain about the past. It is pain mixed with the awareness that the past cannot be revisited. Regret is the realization that you knew better at certain moments and chose comfort anyway. It is the awareness that opportunities were present when energy was high, responsibilities were lighter, and risk was lower. Discipline, when delayed, becomes harder not because the task changes, but because the context does. Your body changes. Your mind changes. Your responsibilities multiply. Your tolerance for discomfort shrinks. What would have required modest effort earlier now requires enormous force. This is why people say, "I should have started sooner," not because the work was easier, but because they were stronger, freer, and more flexible then. Time does not just pass, it reshapes you. There is also a hidden emotional cost to delay. Every postponed action creates background noise in the mind, a low-level tension, a subtle dissatisfaction. You may not consciously think about it, but it drains you. It occupies mental space. It weakens focus. Because unfinished commitments weigh on the psyche, the mind knows when something is unresolved, and unresolved intentions become internal pressure. This is why procrastination feels exhausting. You are not resting, you are resisting, and resistance consumes energy. Discipline clears mental space. Delay clutters it. Time also amplifies identity. The longer you delay, the more delay becomes part of who you are. You don't just delay tasks, you become a person who delays. And identity is powerful. Once delay becomes normal, urgency feels foreign. Action feels extreme. Discipline feels unnatural. This is how years disappear. Not through chaos, but through normalization. You normalize dissatisfaction. You normalize distraction. You normalize unrealized potential. And once something is normalized, it stops feeling urgent. But time never normalizes consequences. At some point, time stops offering second chances, not in a dramatic way, just quietly. Opportunities pass, energy declines, windows close, and suddenly, starting feels heavier than it ever did before. This is not punishment. It is physics. Time rewards momentum. It punishes stagnation. Discipline works the same way. When practiced early, it builds leverage. When delayed, it demands sacrifice. The same action costs more later than it does now. This is true for health, skill, relationships, finances, and self-respect. What makes this difficult to accept is that delay often feels invisible while it's happening. There is no alarm that goes off when you waste a year, no warning when you miss a window. The realization comes later, when comparison becomes unavoidable, when you see others who started earlier, when you notice the gap. That gap is not just between you and others, it is between you and yourself. Time also exposes honesty. You can lie to others about why you haven't started. You can even lie to yourself for a while. But time reveals truth through outcomes. And outcomes are honest. This is why disciplined people value early effort so deeply, not because they are obsessed with productivity, but because they understand leverage. They understand that small efforts made early create freedom later, and small delays made early create pressure later. There is no neutral choice with time. Acting early is not just progress, it is protection. Protection against regret, protection against overwhelm, protection against the crushing realization that life could have been different. The most painful form of regret is not failure. It is inaction. Failure at least contains effort. Inaction contains only excuses, and excuses lose their power when time removes their relevance. Discipline, when practiced now, reduces suffering later. Avoidance, when practiced now, increases suffering later. This is not motivational language, it is a law. You do not need to do everything today. But you need to do something today that aligns with the future you claim to want. Because time listens to action, not intention. The present moment is the only place where discipline has leverage. Tomorrow is already a negotiation. Yesterday is already gone. Now is the only point where effort multiplies instead of compensates. And this is the truth that changes everything once it is fully understood. Discipline is not about doing more. It is about doing things earlier than you feel comfortable doing them. Starting before you feel ready. Acting before you feel confident. Moving before urgency forces you. That is how time becomes an ally instead of an enemy. Delay feels easy now, but it is borrowing pain from the future. Discipline feels hard now, but it is buying freedom later. And freedom is always worth the early cost. That is why time is the hardest test of discipline. And that is why waiting is more expensive than most people ever realize. Chapter 6. You do not rise to discipline, you sink to identity. Most people believe discipline is something they must summon every day, as if it is a resource that runs out, something fragile that must be protected, something that disappears when life becomes difficult. But this belief misunderstands how discipline actually works. Discipline is not a tool you reach for. It is a reflection of who you believe you are. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You sink to the level of your identity. This is why so many people fail repeatedly while knowing exactly what to do. Information is not the problem. Strategy is not the problem. Motivation is not the problem. Identity is. You act in alignment with the person you think you are, even when it hurts, even when it limits you, even when it contradicts what you say you want. If you see yourself as inconsistent, discipline will always feel unnatural. If you see yourself as someone who struggles, effort will always feel heavy. If you see yourself as someone who quits, quitting will always feel logical. Identity is not built by words. It is built by evidence. Every action you repeat casts a vote for the type of person you are becoming, not the type of person you want to be, the type of person you are practicing being. This is why habits are so powerful. Habits are not about efficiency, they are about identity reinforcement. Every habit you maintain tells your nervous system, "This is who I am." Every habit you avoid tells it the opposite. People often try to force discipline on top of a weak identity. They try to behave like disciplined people while still seeing themselves as undisciplined. This creates internal resistance. It feels like pretending. It feels exhausting. And eventually, the identity wins. Lasting discipline only appears when behavior and identity align. This alignment does not come from dramatic change. It comes from repetition, quiet, boring, uncelebrated repetition. When you show up consistently, even in small ways, your identity begins to shift. Not overnight, not emotionally, but neurologically. Your brain updates its model of who you are based on what you repeatedly do, not what you repeatedly think. This is why small disciplines are so dangerous in the best possible way. A daily walk, a short workout, a single page written, a simple routine followed. These actions seem insignificant, but they carry a message. I follow through. Over time, that message becomes belief. And once belief changes, behavior stops requiring force. Most people sabotage this process by aiming too high too quickly. They choose actions that are inconsistent with their current identity, then fail, then reinforce the belief that they are incapable. This is not ambition. It is self-sabotage disguised as optimism. Identity must be built gradually. You do not become disciplined by doing extreme things occasionally. You become disciplined by doing ordinary things consistently. There is also a darker side to identity that few people confront. Once you identify as someone who struggles, that identity becomes comforting. It explains your pain. It protects you from responsibility. It gives you a story. And stories are powerful. Letting go of an old identity can feel like loss, even if that identity is painful. Growth requires mourning who you used to be, and mourning is uncomfortable. This is why some people unconsciously resist discipline. Discipline threatens the story they have told themselves for years. It threatens their excuses. It threatens their self-image. Becoming disciplined would force them to admit that change was always possible. That realization is heavy. Habit loops reinforce identity relentlessly. Cue, action, reward, repeat. Over time, these loops become automatic. You stop choosing them consciously. They choose you. This is why discipline feels hard at first and effortless later. At first, you are fighting existing loops. Later, you are supported by them. Undisciplined lives are not chaotic by accident. They are structured around habits of avoidance, distraction when uncomfortable, rest when effort is needed, delay when action is required. These habits protect comfort and reinforce weakness. Disciplined lives are also structured, but they are structured around habits of engagement, action when resistance appears, movement when doubt arises, consistency when emotions fluctuate. The difference is not talent, it is training. Identity also determines how you respond to failure. When discipline is external, failure feels like proof that you are not good enough. When discipline is internal, failure feels like feedback. You adjust, you continue, you do not collapse. This is because identity-based discipline is not fragile. It is resilient. It does not depend on perfect streaks. It depends on returning to alignment quickly. A disciplined identity does not mean you never fail. It means failure does not change who you believe you are. There comes a moment when discipline stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like self-respect. You no longer act because you are forcing yourself. You act because acting otherwise would feel wrong. This is the deepest level of discipline. At this level, negotiation disappears. You do not debate whether to show up. You do not argue with your feelings. You do not wait for the right mood. The action is simply what you do. This is what people mistake for willpower. But it is not willpower. It is alignment. Alignment between values and behavior. Alignment between identity and action. Alignment between who you say you are and how you live. This alignment creates calm, not excitement. Calm. The calm that comes from internal consistency. The calm that comes from not fighting yourself every day. Most exhaustion is not physical. It is psychological. It comes from constant negotiation, constant self-doubt, constant internal conflict. Discipline removes that conflict by making decisions automatic. Once discipline becomes identity, life simplifies. You no longer need to motivate yourself. You no longer need to punish yourself. You simply live according to who you have decided to be. This is why discipline is not a tactic, it is a transformation. You do not wake up one day and become disciplined. You become disciplined by acting like a disciplined person long enough that it becomes true. And once it becomes true, comfort loses its power. Delay loses its appeal. Excuses lose their credibility. You stop asking, "Can I do this?" You start stating, "This is what I do." That shift is irreversible. Because identities, once earned through evidence, are very hard to break. And that is the real reward of discipline. Not results, not praise, not success, but becoming someone you can rely on. Chapter 7. The day you stop negotiating with yourself. There is a moment in every disciplined life that changes everything. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. No one applauds it. Nothing external shifts immediately. But internally, a line is crossed. This is the moment when a person stops negotiating with themselves. Before this moment, life is a series of internal debates. You argue with your feelings. You bargain with discomfort. You delay decisions, hoping emotions will improve. Every task becomes a conversation. Every responsibility becomes optional. Every commitment becomes conditional. Negotiation feels reasonable. It feels flexible. It feels human. But over time, it becomes the reason nothing changes. Negotiation is not weakness. It is uncertainty about identity. When you negotiate with yourself, you are asking, "Am I the kind of person who does this or not?" And every time you negotiate, you delay the answer. You keep yourself suspended between who you are and who you could be. That suspension is exhausting. The disciplined life begins when negotiation ends. Ending negotiation does not mean becoming rigid or cruel. It means becoming clear. Clear about what you do. Clear about what you tolerate. Clear about what is no longer up for debate. Disciplined people do not wake up every day deciding whether to act. They already decided long ago. What remains is execution. Most people live in reaction to emotion. If they feel good, they act. If they feel tired, they delay. If they feel uncertain, they wait. This emotional dependency gives feelings authority over behavior, and feelings are unstable leaders. Ending negotiation removes feelings from leadership. You still feel resistance. You still feel discomfort. You still feel doubt. But those feelings no longer determine action. They are observed, not obeyed. This shift is subtle, but it is everything. Once negotiation ends, excuses lose their power. Excuses thrive in uncertainty. They survive when standards are flexible. They disappear when standards are fixed. Excuses are not lies. They are explanations you accept. When you stop accepting them, they stop appearing. People often believe excuses come from laziness or lack of discipline. In reality, excuses come from unclear boundaries. When you clearly define what you do and do not do, excuses have nowhere to attach. Ending negotiation also changes how you experience regret. Regret is not just about failure. It is about knowing you avoided effort when it mattered. It is about knowing you talked yourself out of becoming who you needed to become. When negotiation ends, regret loses its future power. You may still regret the past, but you stop creating new regret. And that is freedom. Living without negotiation means you no longer seek comfort first. You seek alignment. You ask, what kind of person would I respect at the end of today? And then you act accordingly. This question is simple but brutal because it removes complexity, it removes confusion, it removes emotional escape routes. Alignment is not always pleasant, but it is peaceful. Negotiation creates inner noise. Alignment creates inner silence. When you stop negotiating, you stop draining energy on decision-making. Life becomes simpler, not easier, but simpler. You know what is expected of you. You know what you owe yourself. You know what happens next. This clarity is rare, and that is why disciplined people appear calm. They are not fighting internal battles all day. They are executing decisions already made. Ending negotiation also means accepting responsibility without resentment. You stop blaming circumstances. You stop waiting for better conditions. You stop hoping life will adjust to your comfort. You accept that growth requires sacrifice, not dramatic sacrifice, ordinary sacrifice, saying no when it would be easier to say yes, showing up when it would be easier to disappear, continuing when quitting would be justified. This acceptance is not heavy, it is relieving, because it removes the burden of expectation. You stop asking life to be fair. You stop asking the process to be easy. You simply do the work. At this stage, discipline stops feeling like pressure and starts feeling like integrity. You are no longer forcing yourself forward. You are honoring a standard you chose deliberately. This is the final transformation. Not external success, not achievement, but self-respect. Self-respect is quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not need validation. It shows up in posture, tone, patience, and consistency. It shows up in the way you move through difficulty without collapsing. People with self-respect do not need motivation. They need clarity. They do not need punishment. They need alignment. This is why disciplined people seem unbothered by chaos. They are anchored internally. Their behavior is not reactive. It is intentional. Ending negotiation also means accepting that discipline does not guarantee comfort. It guarantees honesty. You may still struggle, you may still face setbacks, but you will not betray yourself in the process. And that is the difference between a hard life and a heavy life. A hard life contains effort. A heavy life contains regret. Effort strengthens you. Regret weakens you. When negotiation ends, effort becomes normal, not exciting, not dramatic. Normal. You no longer wait for permission. You no longer wait for feeling. You act because action aligns with who you are. This is the point of no return. Once you live this way long enough, returning to negotiation feels painful. Comfort feels empty. Delay feels dishonest. You cannot unsee what discipline has shown you. And that is the final truth of this chapter. Discipline is not something you add to your life. It is something you become. And once you become it, you cannot go back without feeling the cost. The world does not change when you stop negotiating, but you do, and that changes everything. Chapter 8. Discipline is not a cage. It is freedom. Most people misunderstand discipline because they judge it from the outside. From the outside, discipline looks restrictive. It looks like rules, routines, limits, and sacrifice. It looks like saying no to things that feel good. It looks like effort where others choose ease. And so people assume discipline takes freedom away. But the truth is the opposite. Lack of discipline is the real prison. When you are undisciplined, your time is not yours. It is owned by distractions, impulses, and urgency. Your energy is not yours. It is drained by indecision, procrastination, and guilt. Your focus is not yours. It is fragmented by noise, comparison, and constant stimulation. This is not freedom. This is chaos disguised as choice. Discipline restores ownership. It gives you back control over what most people surrender without realizing it: their attention, their habits, their direction. A disciplined life is not narrow. It is precise. It removes excess, so what matters can breathe. When you remove discipline, everything feels optional. And when everything is optional, nothing is protected. Health becomes optional. Focus becomes optional. Integrity becomes optional. Over time, optional turns into neglected, and neglected turns into lost. Discipline draws lines. And lines are not limitations. They are definitions. They define what you stand for. They define what you tolerate. They define what you will no longer allow to erode your life. People who fear discipline often confuse structure with control. But structure does not control you. It supports you. Structure removes constant decision-making. It reduces mental fatigue. It allows you to move through your day without constantly asking, "What should I do now?" Undisciplined people make hundreds of unnecessary decisions daily. What to do first, what to avoid, what to postpone, what to feel guilty about. This drains cognitive energy. Discipline removes these micro-conflicts by deciding once and executing many times. This is why disciplined people often feel lighter, not heavier. Their minds are quieter. Their actions are clearer. Their days feel intentional rather than reactive. Discipline also protects you from your weakest moments. Everyone has them. Moments of fatigue, moments of doubt, moments of emotional instability. In those moments, willpower disappears. Discipline steps in. Discipline is not about being strong all the time. It is about building systems that work when you are not strong. This is true freedom. Freedom is not the ability to do whatever you want in the moment. Freedom is the ability to live according to your values, even when your emotions fluctuate. Without discipline, emotions dictate behavior, and emotions are temporary, inconsistent, and easily manipulated. When emotions lead, life becomes unstable. Discipline provides steadiness. There is also a deeper form of freedom discipline creates: freedom from self-contempt. When you live without discipline, you may enjoy moments of comfort, but they are often followed by guilt, frustration, and disappointment. You feel the gap between what you did and what you know you should have done. Discipline closes that gap, and when that gap closes, peace emerges. This peace is not excitement, it is not pleasure, it is alignment. The calm that comes from knowing your actions are congruent with your values. Discipline also expands your future options. An undisciplined life feels flexible in the short term, but rigid in the long term. Missed opportunities, declining health, limited skills, narrow choices. A disciplined life may feel restrictive early, but it opens doors later. Health creates energy, skill creates opportunity, consistency creates trust, discipline compounds into freedom over time. This is why disciplined people often appear lucky. They are not lucky, they are prepared. Their freedom is earned quietly, long before it is visible. Another misunderstood aspect of discipline is pleasure. People assume disciplined lives are joyless, but discipline does not remove pleasure, it refines it. Pleasure enjoyed after effort feels different. Rest taken after progress feels deeper. Leisure earned through integrity feels clean. Undisciplined pleasure feels hollow because it carries guilt. Disciplined pleasure feels complete because it carries no debt. Discipline also changes your relationship with time. When your days are structured, time slows down psychologically. You remember your days, you feel present. When days are unstructured, they blur together. Weeks disappear, months vanish. Structure creates memory. Memory creates meaning. This is why disciplined people often say life feels fuller, not busier. They are not rushing, they are directing. True freedom is direction without confusion. Discipline gives you the freedom to say no without explanation. No to distractions. No to commitments that dilute your focus. No to habits that weaken you. And saying no is one of the most powerful freedoms available. Most people say yes because they lack discipline. They fear discomfort. They fear disappointment. They fear missing out. Discipline removes that fear by grounding you in clarity. When you know what you are building, you stop chasing what is irrelevant. Discipline is not perfection. It is consistency with forgiveness. You will miss days, you will stumble, but discipline ensures you return quickly without drama or self-punishment. This is freedom from extremes, freedom from all or nothing thinking, freedom from cycles of obsession and collapse. A disciplined life is sustainable, and sustainability is freedom. At this stage, discipline no longer feels like something you do. It feels like something that holds you, like a structure that supports growth instead of restricting it. You are no longer trying to escape your life. You are building one you respect. That is freedom. And once you experience this freedom, chaos loses its appeal. Comfort without effort feels empty. Distraction feels noisy. You cannot unfeel alignment once you have lived it. Discipline did not trap you. It released you. And this is why the undisciplined life, no matter how comfortable it looks, will always feel heavier than the disciplined one. Because freedom is not the absence of rules. Freedom is the presence of self-respect. Chapter 9. Long after comfort is gone, this is what remains. There comes a point in every life when comfort loses its relevance. Not because life becomes cruel, but because time removes the illusion that comfort ever mattered as much as you thought it did. In those moments, What remains is not how relaxed you were, not how entertained you stayed, not how often you avoided discomfort. What remains is who you became. Legacy is not something you leave behind intentionally. It is something that forms naturally from the way you live when no one is watching. It is the residue of your habits, your standards, your decisions repeated over years. Whether you want one or not, you are building a legacy every day. Most people associate legacy with achievement, wealth, or recognition. But those are surface-level interpretations. The deeper legacy is internal. It is the kind of person you became under pressure, the kind of standards you lived by when comfort was no longer available, the kind of discipline you maintained when excuses were tempting. Comfort disappears eventually. Youth fades, energy shifts, circumstances change. What remains is character. Discipline is what survives when motivation is gone, when novelty is gone, when external validation is gone. It is what carries you through seasons where progress is slow and effort feels invisible. It is what stabilizes you when life removes options instead of offering them. This is why discipline matters far beyond results. Results can be lost, titles can disappear, circumstances can reverse. But discipline remains because it is internal. It cannot be taken from you. People who live disciplined lives age differently, not physically, but psychologically. They carry less regret. They hold less resentment. They move through difficulty with less panic. This is not because their lives were easier, but because they trained themselves to endure. Endurance is an underrated form of strength. It is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It simply stays. When others collapse, it continues. When others search for escape, it adapts. The version of you that discipline builds is not dependent on ideal conditions. That version does not require motivation. It does not rely on excitement. It is steady, grounded, reliable. And reliability is what creates trust. Trust from others, but more importantly, trust within yourself. Long after the excitement of starting fades, long after the novelty of improvement wears off, long after comfort loses its appeal, you will still have to live with yourself. You will still wake up in your own body. You will still carry your own mind. And the quality of that experience depends entirely on who you trained yourself to be. Discipline trains you to respect yourself, not loudly, quietly, through consistency, through follow-through, through standards you do not break even when no one would notice. This self-respect changes how you move through the world. You speak differently. You carry yourself differently. You respond instead of react. You are less desperate for approval because you already have something stronger. Alignment. Legacy is often felt, not seen. People may not remember your words, but they will remember how stable you were under pressure. They will remember whether you followed through. They will remember whether you were dependable. These impressions are formed not in moments of success, but in moments of inconvenience. When you choose discipline in small, private moments, you are shaping how you will be remembered in larger, public ones. Not remembered by the world, but by those who matter, and by yourself. There is also a personal legacy that never involves other people, the legacy of how you treated your own potential, whether you honored it or neglected it, whether you developed it or ignored it, whether you met it with courage or avoided it with comfort. No one escapes this judgment. It arrives quietly in reflection, in moments of stillness, in the realization of what could have been versus what was. Discipline reduces the distance between those two realities. It does not guarantee perfection. It guarantees honesty. An honest life is one where effort matches intention, where standards are lived, not just spoken, where the gap between knowing and doing is small. This honesty creates peace later in life. Not happiness in the shallow sense, but peace. The peace of knowing you did not betray yourself when it mattered. The peace of knowing you endured discomfort instead of avoiding it. The peace of knowing you did not let time pass without resistance. Comfort offers pleasure now and regret later. Discipline offers discomfort now and peace later. This trade-off becomes clearer with age, but the cost is paid either way. Discipline simply allows you to choose when and how you pay it. The disciplined version of you is not immune to hardship, but that version is equipped for it. When loss arrives, when uncertainty grows, when strength is tested, discipline provides a foundation that comfort never could. This is why discipline is not just preparation for success. It is preparation for life itself. When circumstances strip away advantages, when unpredictability takes control, when plans change, discipline remains as an anchor. It does not guarantee outcomes. It guarantees stability. Long after comfort is gone, long after motivation fades, long after excuses lose their relevance, discipline remains as evidence of who you chose to become. And that is the only legacy that truly lasts. Chapter 10. The person you become is the final decision. At the end of everything you chase, everything you fear, and everything you delay, there is one unavoidable truth waiting for you. You will not be judged by your intentions. You will not be defined by your potential. You will not be remembered for what you almost did. You will live with the person you became. Life does not ask who you meant to be. It only reflects who you practiced being. This is the final decision discipline forces you to make. Not today, not tomorrow, but repeatedly, quietly, through ordinary days. The decision is not whether you will struggle or not. Struggle is guaranteed. The decision is whether your struggle will shape you or erode you. Every life becomes difficult eventually. Comfort delays that difficulty, but it does not remove it. Discipline meets difficulty early and learns from it. One avoids pain, the other transforms it. When discipline is absent, difficulty feels unfair. When discipline is present, difficulty feels expected. And expectation changes everything. You stop asking why life is hard. You start asking how you will respond. This response becomes character. Character is not built in moments of success. It is built in moments of inconvenience, in moments where no one is watching, in moments where quitting would be understandable, in moments where effort feels unrewarded. Those moments do not announce themselves. They look ordinary. They feel boring. They feel heavy. But they are decisive. Most people wait for clarity before committing. Discipline reverses this order. It commits first and allows clarity to follow. This is why disciplined people often appear certain, not because they had answers early, but because commitment simplified their choices. Once you commit to who you will be, decisions become easier. You stop asking what feels good. You stop asking what is easiest. You ask what aligns with the person you chose to become. Alignment removes confusion. Confusion drains energy. Energy preserved becomes strength. This is the quiet power discipline gives you. It removes internal chaos. It removes the constant questioning. It removes the emotional bargaining. You are no longer trying to convince yourself to act. You simply act. At this stage, discipline is no longer effortful. It is reflexive. Not because life became easy, but because your standards became clear. You no longer need to argue with yourself. The argument ended when you chose identity over comfort. The person you become through discipline is not perfect. They still feel fear. They still feel resistance. They still feel doubt. But those feelings no longer dictate behavior. They are acknowledged, not obeyed. This is maturity. Maturity is not the absence of struggle. It is the refusal to let struggle define your actions. When you look back on your life later, you will not remember every choice, but you will remember how you felt about yourself, whether you respected yourself, whether you trusted yourself, whether you showed up when it mattered. Discipline ensures those memories are clean. Clean memories are underrated. They are not dramatic. They are not exciting, but they are peaceful. They allow you to sit with yourself without regret gnawing at your mind. This is what people mean when they talk about inner peace. It is not comfort. It is not ease. It is alignment between who you were and who you claim to be. Discipline does not guarantee happiness. It guarantees dignity. And dignity lasts longer than happiness. As life progresses, distractions lose their shine. Approval loses its urgency. Comparison loses its power. What remains is whether you can look at your own reflection without flinching. The disciplined person can. Not because they achieved everything, but because they did not abandon themselves. They faced effort honestly. They accepted responsibility early. They chose growth when comfort was tempting. This is the final truth of discipline. It is not about building a better life first. It is about becoming a stronger person first. A stronger life follows naturally. You cannot escape becoming someone. Time ensures that. The only question is whether you become someone by accident or by design. Discipline is design. It is choosing your future self deliberately. It is deciding, again and again, that comfort will not write your story. Delay will not shape your character. Excuses will not define your days. When you make this decision long enough, it becomes irreversible. You cannot unknow what discipline teaches you. You cannot return to negotiation without feeling its cost. You cannot choose comfort blindly once you have lived with clarity. This is the point of no return. Not because you are trapped, but because you are free. Free from indecision. Free from self-betrayal. Free from the weight of unrealized potential. The person you become is the final outcome of discipline, and that person will carry you through everything that follows. This is where the journey ends, and this is where the standard begins. If you have listened this far, then something inside you already understands what words alone cannot teach. You have felt it in the quiet moments between chapters. You have recognized yourself in the resistance, in the delay, in the discomfort you once avoided. And now you are standing at a different place than where you began. Not louder, not more excited, but clearer. Discipline did not promise you ease. It never did. What it offered you instead was honesty. Honesty about time. Honesty about effort. Honesty about who you are when no one is watching and no one is applauding. And honesty, once accepted, changes everything. You no longer need to search for motivation. You no longer need to wait for the perfect moment. You no longer need to convince yourself that tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow only becomes different when today is lived differently. The truth is simple, even if it is not easy. Discipline is hard, but living with regret is harder. Living with self-doubt is harder. Living with the quiet knowledge that you avoided becoming who you could have been is harder. You now know this. And knowing it comes with responsibility. From this moment on, you will notice the choices more clearly. The moments where comfort whispers, the moments where delay feels tempting, the moments where effort feels inconvenient. You will feel them because awareness has replaced ignorance. And this awareness is your power. You do not need to become extreme. You do not need to become perfect. You do not need to change everything at once. You only need to stop betraying yourself. One promise kept is stronger than 1,000 intentions. One disciplined action is louder than endless planning. One honest day repeated consistently will reshape your life. Let discipline become quiet. Let it become ordinary. Let it become part of who you are rather than something you force. When discipline becomes identity, life stops feeling like a constant battle and starts feeling like a direction. There will still be hard days. There will still be resistance. There will still be moments when quitting feels justified. But you are no longer the person who negotiates with those moments. You are the person who moves through them. This book does not end with motivation because motivation fades. It ends with a standard you now carry forward into your days, your decisions, your habits, and your future. Years from now, you may not remember every word you heard here, but you will remember how it made you confront yourself. And if you choose discipline consistently, you will look back on this moment not as inspiration, but as the turning point where comfort lost its control over your life. You are not waiting anymore. You are not negotiating anymore. You are becoming, and that is the hardest truth of all. But it is also the most freeing one. The end of this book is not the end of the work. It is the beginning of the standard you now live by.